so I can just jump around in terms of your role,
Yeah.
everything. I can
Yeah,
just
I'll do my best to answer. If anything comes up, I'll let you know.
okay. I can just start from the beginning since I know that you started doing fan dubs, right?
I would definitely say that was some of the practice that I got. I remember that when I first got interested in voice acting, I wanted to participate in any regard, whether it
Hmm.
was an independent animation, whether it was a fan dub of anime scenes. In fact, ironically, I think a lot of the practice that I got with fan dubs wasn't really anime scenes as much as it was video game cutscenes.
Oh, yeah,
Either stuff from like Tales of the Abyss, or I remember that there was one from like Final Fantasy or something like that. There was a live dub for Final Fantasy that was happening. Um, I do know that I tried. I wasn't as I got to think of how to word this. I both wasn't as active in the fandom scene as some other people were, and I wasn't as vocal about being in the fandom scene as people were, because part of my early learning about voiceover was kind of like that stigma about, hey, if people know you as like a fan dub actor, that you might end up pissing off, people in professional studios because you're taking their completed work and replacing the people that they had record those characters, and
right.
they just might not look on that very favorably. So while I did partake in fan dubs because it was good practice with matching character archetypes, and in some cases matching very specific lip flaps, which is a very good skill set to have if you want to do dubbing professionally. Most of the work that I focused on was original animations. It was independent projects, or at least it was fan dubs of things that, to my knowledge, did not already have an official dub, so that there was less of a chance of annoying the official cast members by basically saying, I think I could do a better job than you.
Mhm.
So
What was the? Because I know that you were in the Persona 4 comic dub. Was that before anything? Like,
uh like before anything relating to being in Persona, or
oh, just before you got started with Bang Zoom and all that.
I imagine it was before Bang Zoom, the whole thing with Bang Zoom began, because I know that I first got on Bang Zoom's radar in 2009 when I won the AX Idol competition.
Right.
But it wasn't until I graduated college and moved out in 2012 that I actually got to tell them, hey, I'm local, I can come in now and do stuff for you. And I'm strongly remembering that during those college years was when a lot of the Persona comic fan dubs, like Ryoji Ventures, the Persona 4 Hi, I'm Daisy comic dub, all that happened. So I think that's the correct timeline. But I definitely know that it took place before my career really started picking up and even officially beginning. Um, because once I had the opportunity to take workshops to connect with studios, and begin working on my professional career, I know for a fact that all of the fan stuff just kind of really slid off. Like my
Mhm.
focus just veered completely in the opposite direction, and it was like, okay, if I happen to have free time, I can look into maybe doing some fan stuff. But right now, I'm where the work is, so I need to be doing, what the work asks for. So I'd say yes. I'd say most of it took place during the amateur period where I was in college and I was just practicing and just getting myself involved in stuff for the sake of getting used to it.
Okay. And what was the first like official role that you got in anime?
In anime, the first official role that I got was, in fact, if we want to talk official in terms of like they have a name, like people know who they are, they're actually important to the story in some regard, then I would say it was definitely Diabel and Sword Art Online.
Okay.
Prior to that, I had the chance to record for Bang Zoom on various projects as like background demons and like crowd noise. And I think, my first upgrade was when I got to voice a single character whose voice you could deliberately pick out in a crowd and stuff like that. But the first time that I actually had a face and a name was when I voiced Diabel, which to me ultimately was not that big a deal because it was one character in one episode of a very long running anime.
Mhm.
And so in the grand scheme of things, I was like, this was really fun, but it's not a huge deal. So don't like parade it around for the next 3 years. But my colleagues, like my peers, would not let me live it down because of the fact that it aired on Toonami. And
Right.
when you're with this group of people that are all equally passionate about anime, and all of a sudden you voice a character who shows up on the Adult Swim block that you all used to stay up to watch, it kind of leaves an impression on people. So it was funny to me because I was like, yeah, that was fun. I'm gonna move on to other things. And people were like, but you were on Toonami, you were on the TV. Like it was funny. I really appreciated it.
And was your role in Toradora not too long after that?
Oh yeah, that's right. So that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. So you're probably the first person to have brought up Toradora in quite a long time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that qualifies because Sugeno, the gym teacher, actually did have a name and he did show up in multiple episodes. I guess where I draw the distinction is like he kind of is there to just help the plot move along. You know, like there's a difference between, oh, these kids are in gym, so we probably should have a gym teacher, you know, running the class, or else viewers are gonna be like, wait, are all these kids just in a gym with no one chaperoning them or anything like that? Versus Diabel being like, okay, he provides something for the main character to work off of. He creates the tension in the scene. So I do appreciate that you brought that up because I actually don't know anymore if it was Sugeno who I had first or Diabel, because I think Toradora just ended up going straight to DVD. Versus Sword Art Online being on TV. So that much I don't remember, but I mean, kudos.
Oh, for him. And I know not a whole lot of people bring up Saint Seiya either.
I love you, man. You're bringing up like all the series that no one else has talked about. Saint Seiya. So Saint Seiya was an interesting experience for me. Did you have a follow-up on that or something you wanted to add on to that question before I start rambling again?
Well, I was just gonna ask if you were already familiar with the series overall.
Oh, I was familiar with the series, but not in the way you would expect. I mostly knew about Saint Seiya because of the late night commercials for the DVD set that used to air on Adult Swim. And then because of the random appearances of characters from the franchise in Salty Bet, if you've ever heard of that. The Mugen fighter that I did some announcer voices for. So when I came in to record for the Saint Seiya series that I was a part of, I was vaguely aware that it was kind of like a different form of like mythological Power Rangers, so to speak. And ironically to me, because when I was recording for that, it was my first time working with a rather famous colleague as a director who was acting as a director rather than an actor. So I was kind of more focused on like proving to them that I knew what I was doing and that I would be worth working with more often in the future. So I was very focused on listening to them and matching the lip flaps and doing a good job so that they'd be like, ooh, this Chiplock kid is pretty good at this. You know, I'll keep him in mind for the future. So unfortunately, I don't actually remember much about the series itself because my brain was over here instead of on the screen in front of me.
And I guess, well, Hunter x Hunter might have been a little bit after that.
No, Hunter x Hunter was definitely earlier on. I think Saint Seiya happened, I want to say 2 to 3 years ago, something like that. Whereas Hunter x Hunter was one of the early projects. Like I think Toradora, Sword Art Online, Hunter x Hunter, and I'm trying to think of the other one, all kind of happened because I think that was wasn't that like a 2015 dub? I'm gonna pop up while I'm talking real quick. I'm gonna check up my BTVA and see when that one actually happened. Hunter x Hunter. 2016 actually.
Oh, okay.
All right, interesting. But yeah, so like that period was a lot of me voicing characters that were they were pretty somewhat significant, but they were just, you know, one of an ensemble cast. You know, those were the same years that we had Capellion, Seven Deadly Sins, Hunter x Hunter, Mobile Suit Gundam, Iron Blood Orphans, where I was happy to be part of a cast, but I definitely don't think I was playing anyone significant. I feel like a lot of the major important roles started hitting around 2017. Because that's when we started seeing stuff like ReZero, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind was a huge one of that. So I don't remember much of Hunter x Hunter. I do know that it was very fun for me because I liked getting to play Real Velt's more aggressive, desperate side. But it's definitely one of those cases where on the rare occasion that I found a clip from that dub, I'll go back and listen. I'm like, I really did that voice for him? Why why is it so high pitched? Why did I do that? Okay. Like it was a learning process.
And I know that you got to do multiple incidental stuff on XL World.
Yes, that as well. That is also correct. Excel World was one of those cases where I got to audition for a couple roles, including the main character, but ultimately only ended up getting incidentals. It didn't bug me at the time because any work is work at the end of the day. And especially with how early on in my career it was, the ability to continue performing for Bang Zoom, which was the studio that did that, to continue showing them that I could, show up on time, that I could follow instructions, to build that client relationship. I feel like that was the value that I was getting out of those roles. Like, sure, this role may not be very important, I might not be working on this project for very long, but this is getting my name in front of the same casting agents or the same casting directors over and over and over and over again. And as you've seen, that has led to a lot of opportunities for me to work with Bang Zoom nowadays. They were the ones that did ReZero. They're the ones that did the video game as well. They're the ones that did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. And I'm trying to think of the most recent example that came out. Eden Zero was through Bang Zoom as well. So I have no regrets about the fact that I didn't get any bigger roles back then, because what it has led to is stuff that I really, really enjoy.
And in terms of ReZero, do you think that you relate the most to Subaru in terms of characters that you've played?
Oh God, do I relate to him? There was a very important scene in episode 18 that I talk to people about often, where I say, they're like, you did so well in that scene. I can't believe it was so realistic. And I said, that's because it wasn't acting. His whole monologue about, I don't use my potential as much as I should be, and you should find someone more interesting, and I'm ultimately useless because I get in over my head and I try to cover for things that I can't be the hero for. Whoo boy, I have definitely had that conversation before in a different format with people who are very important to me. So it Subaru, another one that I want to bring up in season 2 in particular. There's an episode that he basically spends 2 major story beats saying goodbye to his parents, because he's in that dreamlike state and he doesn't know if he's ever going to see them again, and so he treats that as his opportunity to have a heart-to-heart with them and say, hey, here's the conversation I always wanted to have with you, but I never got to. And for me, it was kind of practice, both practice in saying goodbye to my mother for a second time, who actually has passed on, and practicing saying goodbye to my dad, who is an extremely strong, positive influence in my life, and thankfully is still around to celebrate my successes, but won't always be. So basically, any of Subaru's bitter or very internalized emotional moments, there's at least one real world application in my life that I was able to apply to it. And I'm actually grateful that I could access that vulnerability in order to make that performance that much more believable, because I'm super, super proud of both what I've pulled off and what I've gotten to showcase through Subaru. And I hope that trend continues.
Right. I guess, I can just base that off your answer. In terms of all the characters you've played, like, what's the darkest emotional headspace you've had to get into for a role?
That's actually a harder question to answer, because while I do understand that some characters require going into a darker emotional headspace, I'm going to be totally honest. When I'm in the booth, I'm like a golden retriever. I'm just happy to be there. Okay. Like, they can be like, we still don't like that. We need to do a 15th take. And I'll be like, more voice acting. Yay. Like, even on those scenes where like I had to go into that dark headspace and play on my life experiences, there's kind of like this humorous approach of me going, haha, screw you, negative emotions. I get to use you to get paid. Eat shit, yeah. And honestly, like, even in scenes like in the one in ReZero where he, has a breakdown in Amelia's lap, what made it so exhausting for me wasn't the fact that it was so upsetting or so sad. It was that I had to put myself in a state of crying to make it sound realistic, and then do it over and over and over and over again, to the point where when I came home from that session, I passed out on the bed at like 2:30 in the afternoon and slept until 8. And it wasn't because I was upset. It was because I was so drained of energy from forcing myself to cry or be in a position to cry that my body was just like, nah, I'm done. Good night. You know, so I would probably say it was still, you know, Subaru Natsuki from ReZero is the one where I've had to touch on those emotions more often. But even then, it hasn't, none of it has really lingered with me because I'm so passionate about this craft that it's in the moment. It's all in the moment. And as soon as it's done, it's gone.
Right. And in terms of major video game roles, would Kiyotaka came before Reen, or was it Reen first?
Kiyotaka definitely came before Reen, for sure.
Okay.
Kiyotaka was around this, because the reason why I know that is because Kiyotaka was around the same time as East Memories of Celceta. And Memories of Celceta is what set the stage for Reen to come by, because the performance that I did in Memories of Celceta would come up about a year and a half, 2 years later, as a reference point for Brittany Avery, who was working on Cold Steel. And that's what led her to say, oh, I really like what he did in Memories of Celceta. I think he could be a good choice potentially for Reen Schwarzer. So yeah, Kiyotaka was definitely earlier on, and he was particularly early in my career because that was back when, for me, voice acting in an anime style just meant talking louder than my normal voice, which I've been practicing my whole life. And so it worked for Kiyotaka because Kiyotaka is a very, you know, sturdy, robust, you know, outwardly spoken individual. But I try to tell people not to look into the role too much or into the performance, because it just happened to be, it was task failed successfully. It was, you are overacting, but it works for this character. So good job, you know.
And does your did the kind of fan base for your character in Persona 5 surprise you? Because he's actually has a pretty big following.
Does he really?
Yeah.
I always thought it was kind of an ironic fan base, if anything else, where it's just like, oh, we wish Mishima had more of a following. We wish that he was a romanceable option. We wish that he had more of a presence or could actually be a member of the Phantom Thieves. It always kind of registered to me like he was just constantly hovering in between being important and not being important, and it was just as much a source of memery as it was of affection. But if he's got a bigger fan base, like, I'm all for that.
Okay. And in terms of Rain, with how often you've been or how long you've been playing him, did you relate to him immediately?
I did. There were plenty of elements of Reen that I related to, maybe not as much as Subaru. You know, I like that he tends to downplay, you know, his level of contribution to certain things. He, you know, wants to rally everyone together and get everyone working as a team when possible. Even though he does tend to want to address things by himself because he figures this is my problem. It's something I need to take care of. I don't want to get anyone else involved. But he is very, maybe he is me. I was going to say he is very dense. I'm looking over at my wife as I say this. He is very dense when it comes to understanding the subtle romantic nuances of what other people say to him. And the look she's shooting back is like, you, oh, I love you too, honey. Yeah, so there are definitely elements of him that I identify with, but maybe I'm not as clued into what aspects of him I identify with as other characters.
Okay. I think it is really funny that all the different memes of Diluc and stuff with your voice that people do all over YouTube.
Dude, Diluc sends me for a ride. Like, every time I hear that there's another freaking TikTok video or Instagram video focused around Diluc, I'm like, why is he so popular? I don't understand. He's not memey like Venti. He's just a dude. Like, I don't understand.
So is it hard for you to relate to anything with him?
The one thing that I think applies to me as much as it does Diluc is the fact that he really prefers grape juice over wine. Sparkling grape juice is one of my favorite, like, personal vice drinks of all time, to the point where when I was younger and I would be offered a glass of wine to celebrate New Year's with the rest of the family, I would prefer to have sparkling grape juice instead.
Okay.
So that's the one thing I share in common with him.
And even with your role as Kiro in the Mr. Love series, that's obviously super popular as well.
Yeah, I definitely identified more with Kiro. Just the fact that he had, a massive respect for and love of animals, his love of food in general, the fact that he's very open with his affections. He wears his heart in his sleeve, and it's not hard to tell when he's in a good mood versus a bad mood. Unfortunately, I won't be able to explore that anymore because they did end up recasting the talent a couple months ago. But I enjoyed the time that I spent with him, and I really, really enjoyed the maturity and respect that the fan base offered me. So it was a good time. It was a good experience.
And still on the topic of video games, this might be obvious, but is your favorite video game character you've played Rivali?
Rivali is actually the one that frustrated me the most.
Okay.
So what I've always said is I try to find something about every role that I do to cherish, whether it's a new milestone I accomplished, a challenge that I overcame, or something that I knew I would do well, and I just got to showcase my strengths. But Rivali definitely wouldn't apply as one that I was particularly happy with. And I mean that in the sense of I'm happy now with what I've done with the character, but he definitely frustrated me early on because trying to understand his motivations with what limited info I had from the game so far made it difficult to clue into what the type of person that he was.
Okay.
So now I understand it, but back then I didn't, and it was really frustrating. So I'm really glad that it happened with someone like Rivali because I loved him so much that it was super easy for me to put in the time and effort regardless of how stressed out I was. But if we're talking characters that it was easier to find something to cherish about, Rivali definitely isn't even top 3 in that regard.
Okay. Was there anything, and based on that topic, was there anything that you could take away that was a positive for your the demon you played in Demon Slayer?
Oh yeah, so the one that what I really enjoyed about playing Demon in the Bog and Demon Slayer was that it was 3 characters that were the same character. So it was, what are 3 completely different aspects of this voice that you can explore while keeping the voice consistent between all 3. So you had, the brains of the group that was kind of the logical one that kind of spoke on behalf of the others. You had the one that was super aggressive and just wanted to be, angry all the time. And then you had the feral one that doesn't actually talk, they just grind their teeth, which, holy hell, doing that for 30 to 45 seconds at a time was a challenge in and of itself. So I really enjoyed that, like, I had to explore these 3 very different interpretations of the character, all using the same vocal tone as a reference.
And how was it like for you stepping into playing Trunks and DB Super?
I don't talk about Trunks in DB Super simply because that role was so short-lived that it's just not worth bringing up. Like I'm glad that I got to be a part of that universe, but literally my entire involvement as Trunks before they ended up canceling the rest of the dub was 2 efforts and a line. It was die Frieza, ha ha, and it was so brief that it kind of surprised me that that's what people latched onto. And I honestly think it caused more problems for me than it did opportunities because, one, I was really worried about pissing off the members of the Funimation dub, considering that I'd already heard of one other example where like the Asia dub actor was touting that they voiced this character and it caused confusion with people who supported the Funimation dub, and they started messaging the Funimation actor being like, oh, did you get replaced? And the Funimation actor was not happy at all about having to deal with this. Yeah. So as soon as I knew about that, I was like, just keep quiet. Just don't bring it up. Like, just let Eric Vale have his time. He is the main Trunks. And so every time that a convention or like, someone that was hosting a specific interview would bring up, it amazes me that it still gets brought up. And I'm not upset with you. I'm just saying this from like a point of amusement. Yeah. It amazes me that it still gets brought up to this day because I make no effort whatsoever to talk about it outside of when folks like you discuss it. And yet it's the one that people instantly latch onto. And I'm like, there are so many other options. Please let this role perish. Let it die in obscurity. I will not be bothered. I promise you.
And so I guess with your role as Guido was that um since that was kind of unlike anything you had done up until then, was that uh just as easy to step into for you
Sorry, one more time.
with your role as Guido?
Oh, Guido. Guido Mista was definitely middle of the road. It was, he was a brand new experience. It was my first time voicing a main character in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I kind of already knew that it played up a lot of stuff, which works well for me because I'm a very animated individual. I just had to find a way to help his personality fit in with the rest of the members of Passione. So once I understood that Guido was the kind of person who's very loyal, but also really enjoys when he gets to play up the gangsta aspect of being part of a mafia group, that was very easy for me to attach myself to. So it wasn't as easy as I understand immediately what I'm doing with this character, but it was definitely a case of the longer it went on, the more comfortable I got and the easier it was to get right back into that headspace.
Okay. And it was cool to see you be one of the leads in God of High School.
Mhm.
That's also kind of not totally like what you might normally play.
For sure. And for me, the really big thing about God of High School was the fact that I was a co-lead alongside Veronica Taylor, which many people know Veronica for her voice as Ash Ketchum back during the main Pokemon series. And that is so surreal to me because I grew up watching those episodes before I'd leave for school. And it's just the concept of the passage of time where I've gone from being a minor, a child watching this show, to voicing in an anime alongside the woman who voiced the lead of the show I grew up with.
Mhm.
It's so weird. It's so weird to think about.
And then this kind of the same reaction, maybe even more so with your being Bruno
I'm trying to
in
think.
Burn the
Go
Witch.
ahead. Oh, Burn the Witch. Yeah, Bruno. So Bruno Bagknife. That one was just I like that show or that experience because it was just completely unexpected. It was something I wasn't familiar with. I know that I think it was produced by the same person who did Bleach, if I'm correct. And so I came in with no expectations. I was ready to experience something new. What's funny though, is Bruno was the first time I booked a role off of an audition I did in the back seat of a car. Because I was visiting a friend of mine in Oregon at the time. And when the audition came in and the deadline was also while I was still on vacation. So I told my friend, hey, I'm going to go record for this real quick. It was like 10:30 at night. And I'm sitting in the back seat of my car in the middle of the wilderness reading for this character while trying to get it done before I start overheating because of the circulation in the car. And I sent it off. And when they sent me an email saying, hey, you booked it, I was like, yo, let's go, get that work no matter how you do it. So I don't know. It was a very new experience for me in terms of recording, and it was a new experience for me in terms of auditioning. So let's go.
And do you have a personal preference in terms of characters you play when it comes to like, I don't know, like bigger, stronger, like buffer characters like that, or do you like more comedic?
I obviously do really well with characters that are very jovial, that are very high energy, characters that are villains that happen to be exaggerated, crazier, or insane, or at least that are very bloodthirsty. I do very well with exaggerated emotions, and I'm trying to get better about playing more nuanced, grounded, realistic roles. But I would say the kind that like I really enjoy the most are, I don't get to do it very often, but I'm a really big fan of characters that are calm in their confidence. Like Rivali is a good example, but I mean characters that are almost like soft spoken because of how confident they are.
Okay.
A really good example is Luka Yonezuki in Shadowverse Champions Battle, but also I think Rei Saotome. I think the character that Joe Zija plays, I think it's Rei Saotome. Oh no, it's Kai Ijuin. Yeah, Kai Ijuin.
Okay.
Kai is he calls himself like a genius among geniuses. But he's a little bit more nasal, but he's not very loud. He just has extreme confidence in himself. And I really like that type of thing because it doesn't wear me out as quickly, but it also has like the confidence is in the personality, not in the loudness, in the volume, if that makes sense.
And what is in terms of anime, what is the most difficult voice like in terms of maintaining
Mm.
that you had?
Honestly, I would say it was Shiki Granbell in Eden Zero.
Oh, okay.
Just because he's a higher base pitch for me than Subaru is, and he is more action oriented than Subaru is. So he's going to tend to do things that require more effort, more output, more oomph. And he may not love screaming as much as Asta in I forget what series Asta is from.
Black Clover.
Yeah, Black Clover. But he does enjoy shouting, and he feels like the louder he shouts, the more correct his point is. So when I have to do that with a higher bass pitch, it's difficult. So
how was that? Since it was another case with One Punch Man playing a bunch of different characters.
Oh, I mean, that was an interesting challenge just in the sense of whenever I get to play multiple characters in a show, like I am very adamant about making them each sound distinct. I don't want people to be able to easily pick out and be like, oh, that's a Sean roll, that's a Sean roll, that's a Sean roll. I couldn't name any of the ones that I voiced in One Punch Man if you asked me, besides I know I did the pineapple dude and like one of the alien people.
Okay.
But like I said, like that was one of those cases where it's a good opportunity for me to showcase to the director how varied my range is, because there have been cases where I have been brought on a show for no other reason than because the director knows that I can cover multiple roles, and they bring me in as like a filler man to help, do a bunch of characters in the background or do a bunch of minor characters that have distinct voices. And to me, that's still extra work, Anytime that I get paid $300 to record for 4 hours doing a bunch of different characters, that's easy dinner for me and a relaxing rest of my week. So
and there is, I mean, I think this is an anime, but as far as I can see, the most roles you've done in a single series would have been in the Marvel TLDR.
So Marvel TLDR was an interesting thing for me because I was really happy to be a part of it, but there was a point, and I voiced this to the creators of the show as well, so it's not like a secret regret, where I felt like I was voicing too many of them. Like there comes a point where like you can only do so many different voices before everyone is like, is this the same guy? Like, doesn't this sound like this other person? Are they the same in the universe? So I wouldn't have minded if they used me a little less often. However, that doesn't change the fact that I had a surreal moment when I had a brief, like 3-month stint at Disney California Adventure, where I was walking backstage while I was making my way over to the California Adventure side. I'm in the cast member only area, and as I'm walking by, I hear something, and I look up, and the cast TV screens are airing episodes of Marvel TLDR. So I look up, and there is my voice on a Disney cast member TV screen, and it was both heartwarming and saddening, because on the one hand, I'm like, oh my god, I'm on a Disney TV screen. But then it wasn't like I could turn around to everyone around me that was walking to their own shifts and going, that's me, guys. Like no one cares. No one gives a crap. So
I know that you got to be in one incantation of Pokemon.
Yes. I have wanted to be a part of Pokemon for a long time. I even had a chance to audition / practice record for some of the Pokemon in Detective Pikachu in the film. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of them, but the fact is I got to try for them. And yeah, I was just grateful to be a part of that, because I feel like Detective Pikachu was one of the first modern video game movies or video game focused movies that actually performed really well at the box office and was respected for various reasons rather than mocked. Like the fact that I can't think of any particular negative impressions of Detective Pikachu is already a really good sign. So I would love if I could be a part of like the games or the animated show. And it hasn't happened yet, but I am still grateful to be a part of that universe regardless. Oh, that's true. I was also a part of Masters as Siebold and Nanu.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to discredit that either.
And this is going back to roles that I wouldn't expect to necessarily see you in. I loved Shin and Dorohedoro.
I call Shin my dark future Lucas. from Earthbound. So Shin was a very I'm proud of him for multiple reasons. One is because he was kind of a milestone opportunity for me to see how far I'd come in improving my performance of deeper voiced roles. Because as you can tell, I'm definitely more of a tenor, if anything, in my vocal pitch. And so I used to struggle with voicing lower pitch characters without automatically making them sound very old or very grizzled or very monstrous. And Shin came at a perfect time where it felt like I had some time away from that type of role, and I wanted to see if I could pull it off, if I'd gotten better at it. But also, Shin was recorded, or that series was recorded through Spliced Bread Productions. I came to know of Spliced Bread because of their work with Beastars Season 1. And I really, really, really wanted to be a part of Beastars. I really enjoyed that show. I loved the aesthetic. I loved the animation. And I asked my agency to get in touch with Spliced Bread and say, hey, are there any other characters or roles that I can audition for, even if they're like minor characters in the background? And Spliced Bread said, no. Unfortunately, we've already done all the casting for Season 1. We're pretty much wrapped up with it. But we haven't worked with you guys before. We need to do more work with your agency, and we like what your demo provided to us. So we'll keep you in mind, and we've got some other stuff that we've got auditions coming up for. We'll send them your way. And I said, yes, please. And the very first one that they sent me was for Dorohedoro. And so I talk to people often. I say, this is one of those examples of, even if you don't get what you want, you have to be willing to chase those opportunities that are offered to you regardless. Because I could have just as easily said, oh no, if it's not Beastars, I'm not interested. But here was an opportunity to get in with a brand new client, a brand new studio that hadn't worked with me yet. And the fact that I booked the very first audition that they sent me was a huge positive first impression. I was like, do not waste this. And similar to how I mentioned earlier about knowing that, or if a client knows that I have a very good range, very good quality, that it can pay off for me. My performance on Dorohedoro and my performance, I think it was also Burn the Witch was also done through the same production. I might be wrong. I'm not sure. When Beastars Season 2 came around, well, the people who had worked on Season 1 and had worked with me on these other shows go, oh, I knew that Chiplock was really interested in this, and I know that he's really good at what he does. I'm sure we can find places to fit him in. So while I didn't end up getting to audition for any specific roles, there's a funny story about that. It's basically they forgot to send me the auditions. But I don't mind, because they still brought me in. I got to voice Tao and like 4 other characters, so I got to show up all throughout Season 2. And the fact that they thought of me and brought me in means so much to me. But it all started with Dorohedoro. And so that's why I'm really happy with Shin, because I did a great job. I pulled off a new type of character that I hadn't done very often, and I had set the stage for my relationship with Spliced Bread that down the line would allow me the opportunity to do something that was very important to me.
And in terms of Shin and with the whole setting of Dorohedoro being as dark as it is, was there like a process that you had for preparing his character and like developing his character?
He was fairly straightforward. Like, I understood that first of all, I really enjoyed that, like, the magicians or whatever they're called in the show, like, they kind of brush off the fact that they just had limbs removed and stuff like that. They're like, oh, that sucks. I just washed this. I just finished reattaching this. I thought that nonchalant demeanor was kind of amusing. But otherwise, I understood that Shin was, he's very business focused. He's very casual about stuff. His points of anger are only when he feels actually backed into a corner, or like when he realizes things are serious. So he had 2 modes. He was either very stoic and very calm and very confident, or the comedic side, the opposite of that, was he got very flustered and very high energy when thinking about Noe or whoever it was that he had a potential relationship with, or he had a crush on. And so it was, since I knew that there were those 2 modes to him, it was easier to switch between the 2 of them. I'd say if I struggled with anything more, it was just making sure that I maintained the voice rather than the attitude.
Okay. And also on the same topic of darker roles, I know Frankenstein would have been after that.
yes, from Noblesse. I really hope more people check out Noblesse. I understand that it's kind of a more of a here's these handsome men for you to look at while we piece together a plot, but I don't know. I just feel like it was a decent story, and I really like the character interactions. It was fun for me to play like a suave demeanor type character with a voice like Frankenstein's. Even though Frankenstein was not, it took me a couple episodes to realize this had no relation at all to like the classic novel that people often reference.
Right.
But it was a good show, and I enjoyed it, and I really hope more people check it out.
Most recently, it was cool since I'm a fan of Inuyasha. It was cool to see you be in Yashahime.
Oh yes, I actually had the chance to audition for Miroku when they were handing off the role, because I think the original actor passed away.
Yeah.
And while it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to get the role, I feel like I would have had a lot of fun with Miroku. I don't hold it against anyone. I'm happy that they still brought me in. You know, like I said, it feels like I love these clients where I have this relationship where even if I don't book the role that they had me audition for, it feels like there's this confidence that they can fit me in somewhere if they need me. And that's kind of my own version of job security. Like, obviously, I'm not going to assume that I'm going to just get a role in every series I audition for. But there is like this small sense of, as long as I can keep proving myself and showing that I can cover a wide range, there's a pretty good chance that if they need somebody, if they're like, we're not sure who to use, they might use me as a failsafe. And anytime I'm used as a failsafe, that's a check. And I'm not going to complain about that. So...
Is there any kind of interesting story about how you became the voice of Kai in the latest Guilty Gear game?
So, well, it was probably the fastest turnaround on an audition I ever did. Because I remember getting the auditions one morning, and I sent the auditions back like 15 minutes later, and then 35 minutes later after that, they came back and said, "Yep, this sounds great. We're gonna cast you as him. What's your availability on these days?" So I was like, what? Like this is a major character. You can't just make a decision that quickly. But they did, and it worked out really well. I think it might have helped that one of the people in charge of directing or in charge of casting was someone who had worked with me on the Trails series. So they kind of, and I don't mean that in the sense of, oh, you know, I got a leg up because they knew me. So, you know, I had like privilege and stuff like that, but more of the sense of the person working on this project already knew me intimately. And so they probably knew like, hey, I know that there's a type of voice Sean can do that would be perfect for this character. I'm going to send auditions to him and see if he can give me that. They got exactly what they were hoping for. And they were like, that's what we wanted. So let's cast him. You know, it was a no brainer. And that will happen sometimes. So, but I just found it funny that the entire process of receiving the auditions, sending them out, and booking the gig took less than an hour, which is there are roles that I have booked that they notified me about 4.5 months after the audition deadline passed. And by then I was like, all right, I definitely didn't get it. So then they reach out and they're like, hey, we're ready to start rolling on this. And they've cast you as so-and-so. And I'm here like, what?
Yeah. Or how about with being Nero in FF7?
Nero, I was very scared about making a good impression. I knew that they wanted to be less exaggerated versus the Japanese audio. And I also knew that this was a character who kind of had I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of the term that people use for stuff like Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's like a cult hit, cult favorite.
Cult following. Yeah.
Cult following, something like that. There's a specific term that's eluding me right now. But I wanted to make sure that people didn't feel like he had been ruined by somebody who didn't understand the character well enough. He was definitely a case where I understood more the more I went along and the further into his performance that I got. But yeah, I think it worked out for the better, and I'm just super grateful for that.
I know most recently in terms of video games, you would have been on Lost Judgment.
Wait, is Lost Judgment out, or?
I think it's out now.
Let me check. Release date. Oh shoot, it comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're a day early, and I'm gonna play it safe. But I look forward for Lost Judgment to come out, and I hope the cast had a fun time recording for it.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just a case where if it's stuff that hasn't come out yet, I don't want to accidentally reveal anyone that's taking part. It's just for the sake of NDAs.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of anime, what's the safest thing that you can talk about?
Basically, if it's already out, I've already talked about it. Like,
Okay.
so the most recent one is Eden Zero for obvious purposes. In fact, I can't even think of any other anime that I've voiced in yet that haven't been released yet. No, but like I'm very passionate about this. So like the minute that or the day that something comes out that I'm allowed to talk about it, I'm already talking about it on social media. So, yeah, it works out in my favor because then it means if you haven't heard about something from me, chances are it's either because I'm not in it or because I'm not allowed to talk about it yet.
Okay.
I don't keep secrets. I want every excuse to talk about something that I'm a part of.
Mm-hmm. And the final question I do for interviews is asking, what do you want your legacy to be? Like so far, anyway.
God, I don't know. I'm so honestly afraid of just like dying and passing on and like not being able to perform and stuff like this anymore. I just hope that I can be a part of this career until my dying breath. I really do. Even if I became a millionaire, I would want to do this regularly. All that being rich would do is make it easier for me to upgrade my home studio and afford workshops and make sure that I have the time to do this sort of thing. I would not retire even if I had the money to be able to do so. But outside of that, I guess I just want to be seen as a positive influence, the same way that Troy Baker and his performance inspired me to get into voice acting. I like to think that, maybe there's someone out there that sees a performance I did and I'm the one that kickstarts them into being like, I want to be a part of this craft, And I think that would be the coolest thing that I could do, at some point, I was just this young high school kid that discovered VO and was like, I don't know what this is, but I want to be a part of it. And now I got to be a part of an award-winning, highest selling of its franchise, first party console release day game like Breath of the Wild.
Right.
And so if I could do it, there's nothing stopping anyone else from having the same experience with me as the catalyst. And I think that would be pretty cool. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, they get some interesting questions in there. Thank you very much for making the time for me.
Yeah, you were actually my 72nd interview, so
oh my god, dude, let's go. Set like 7-2, 72nd.
Yeah, the one I did before was Skip Stelrecht, who was the original voice of Ryu in Street Fighter and Vicious and Cowboy Bebop. And
oh shit, Vicious, let's go. Let's go. That's so cool. I hope that you got some enjoyable answers. I hope you had fun as well.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Take care, dude.
Yeah, you too.